afternoon, everyone. I'm JaVonni Brustow. This is the Media Mogul News Network, and I'm here today with Pastor Shannon Wright. Some of you all should know her from heading up the Baltimore City Republican Party and for running for mayor to become the first Republican to hold that seat in 50-some years. Thanks for coming on, Pastor.
Thank you.
Yes, it's great to be able to sit down and have a conversation, this time on camera. But I wanted to ask you first. So I literally just found out a couple hours ago that you went to Virginia State.
I did, and Petersburg was very different from where I grew up, and the fact that VSU was had a big concentration in animal husbandry, and there's a lot of farm things going on, was the first time that my New York lifestyle was introduced to onion milk.
Wow.
From cows that eat onion grass right there on campus. And that was an experience.
I think this is the first time I have heard of onion milk.
You don't want to know no more about it.
Really? Okay, so there were cows that were grazing at the time. Okay, that says a lot. The last time I passed by, I don't recall seeing any cows.
It has changed a lot in the Petersburg area. I'm not even going to say how long ago that was. But let's just say once you got to campus, unless you had a car, your parents knew you were safe on campus because you weren't going nowhere.
Okay, and I have to say, and just for those out there who don't know, I'm in Petersburg, Virginia. I used to live in DC, and I've been out here for some time. That's the reason why that Virginia State connection was important. I was surprised, so I said, "Well, she does have a connection to this area, so we're not that distant." Yep. And you have to come pay us a visit at some point. You have to pay your alma mater a visit. I've been meaning to.
I still have some family in the Virginia area, and funny story, real quick.
I actually didn't know that you had family here either.
Oh yeah. That's why my parents packed me up and shipped me off to Virginia. They knew family was close enough by, and I got that on-campus experience. Okay. But funny thing, in politics, you have to have a really determined spirit. Those that follow astrology will say because I'm in April, then the sign astrological Aries, Ram, all that. I'm stubborn, but I'm just gonna say determined.
Aries are all of that.
Oh my goodness. I wanted to go into music or fashion design. My dad said, "You're going to go into business or economics." And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, I said, I want to play an instrument in high school. And he says, "Okay, great. You want to play the flute, the clarinet?" And I looked at him, I said, "No, I want to play the drums." He said, "No, you're not." So I took up the drums. And that determination and that determined spirit, long story short, I went to VSU on a full music scholarship playing the drums.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you're actually from New Jersey, something else that
I was born in New York, but raised in New Jersey, yes.
And so the move down to Baltimore, how did that come about?
Well, we were living in New Jersey, and Hurricane Sandy came along and decided we didn't need our house anymore. So my sister, who lives in Baltimore, said, "Well, we got a lot of room, so come on down, just stay for a minute and figure out what it is you want to do, where you want to be." And that was a lot of years ago, and we've been here since.
Okay, that was my first time hearing the story with his sister. I mean, that was definitely nice of her. I mean, you've got family up and down the East Coast, apparently.
I do. So funny thing, my oldest lives in Florida. Number 2 lives in Colorado. Number 3 and 4 live in the Carolinas. My brother is in California, and all my in-laws are in New York. So we're all over the place.
Okay, so apparently I was right. And not quite South Carolina for me, but I did grow up partially in Georgia. I was in Augusta until I was about 12 or 13.
Wow.
So, yeah, I do have a little bit more in common. And so for you to be involved in Republican politics in the city of Baltimore, And that's something that only an Aries, I believe, would want to do. That type of stubborn attitude to actually get up and to continue doing that. Now, I love what I do. I mean, I have been in the party since 2011, and I've been involved the most over the last 2 or 3 years in being in Virginia. But, as much as, and my job is literally to talk up the city, both because I do like PR work involving the image of the city, but as much as I talk it up, well, there's also all of the problems as well. And I would be lying if I didn't say that I didn't have my days where I have said, quite the contrary to, the usual of selling this area. But for Baltimore, I was just reading this morning. I saw in, I think it was Traveler magazine, Condé Nast magazine, of a list of places for people to travel to Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So we certainly can't get any press like that. So, I mean, it's not for a lack of people selling the area. I think that the issue obviously would be the city's leadership trying to make it livable outside of the harbor.
There you go. See, just because you say something loud and repeat it often doesn't make it so.
That was what I was thinking today when I looked at those travel options for Baltimore. You have a lot of press telling people to come and visit Baltimore and why it's a good idea to move there.
So interestingly enough, our mayor thought it would be a good use of dollars when the city is in an economic downturn because of so many businesses closing because of COVID, to take millions of dollars and spend it on an ad campaign to promote travel during a pandemic when folks are supposed to be staying home and being, using common sense. So that's the kind of leadership we're dealing with here in Baltimore. Now, it seems to me, if you were going to spend those dollars to promote economic development, you might, I don't know, try and support some of the businesses that are actually employing people in the city right now.
Yeah.
Instead of launching an ad campaign for people, again, to travel when they're not supposed to be doing that. I don't know.
And I'll add now for that, because I have followed where our COVID money goes very closely. And I've started, I attend all of our city council meetings, some boards and commissions meetings. I live stream them because for some reason, our leadership just doesn't know how to save the video for people who aren't available at noon. How convenient, right?
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
So much for that transparency we all hear folk talking about.
Yes, but I've started interrogating them lately, so that's the fun tangent that I'm on. But part of it is that, so we actually did spend money on the marketing portion, but that was for once things were reopening, to let people know, hey, you can actually go outside and do stuff now. But the amount was, I remember a number of $30,000. So I know there were only 30,000 people compared to your 600,000, I think. But
right.
I mean, millions, plural.
Millions.
That sounds
not singular, plural.
That's very extreme.
I mean, if you think about the amount of restaurants alone, just in the restaurant industry, that were impacted and affected by COVID, the amount of good that money could have done, giving those businesses that were closed, I mean, forced to be closed for so many months and employ so many people here in the city, it seems to me that would have even been a better use of the money than saying, hey, come on, travel, even though you're not supposed to. But
yes, I'm just, I'm sorry, that's definitely that sticker shock for that
so
amount.
It goes right along with the leadership of Baltimore. We have a let's see, how do I put this? She's called a prosecutor, but she's decided not to prosecute things. So I guess you can't call her a prosecutor then, can you? Because she has decided, she made this big deal about saying how she, in the last cycle, had reduced crime by like 24%. I
haven't had a chance to study that, but
now,
go ahead.
But you don't have to study it. I'm going to explain it to you.
Okay.
If I no longer count open containers, drugs, drug paraphernalia, trafficking, or prostitution, then my numbers do go down, because where the numbers were in those categories, we're just they're no longer there. So now crime has gone down by 24% because our prosecutor, because I don't know what else to call her, has decided there are certain categories of crimes. Now, they've always had the discretion of what cases they were going to bring forward and pursue charges against the prosecutors and all that. But to boldly go where no man has gone before and publicly announce that you are no longer going to prosecute things and then go that step further to direct the police department to basically, like you do in fishing, catch and release.
Yes.
That to me, at a place where we're in a homicide epidemic, where we are having all sorts of issues for 6 years in a row, over 300 homicides a year. So it seems to me quality of life is certainly a concern. Crime and safety is clearly a concern. So in a time when you're facing a pandemic, an economic downturn, and all of the key ingredients to increase crime, for you to decide that you're just not going to prosecute what you call those pesky little parts of crime, which further impact and erode the quality of life, you done lost your mind.
And, well, she might be, she's got her own stuff going on.
Exactly. And perhaps she has lost her mind and her focus, and federal investigations into your dealings and your family can do that to a person. I understand that. But then that becomes a good time to look at perhaps taking an extended vacation, allowing the federal agencies, of which there are several, cooperating together to really do their job and see if you still have a job. I'm just saying.
Speaking of corruption, for the seat that you were running for, now, tell me if I'm wrong. I believe that the last 6 or so mayors, going back to the 90s, I think that all of them have gotten in trouble with some type of corruption, with the exception of Jack Young. And that's because he wasn't there long enough to get a chance for something to happen. No.
Let's wait. Let's tell the truth and shame the devil. Jack has been here in elected office in Baltimore City to know where all the bodies are buried.
Okay.
But Jack has also been around long enough to know how to keep his hands clean. Not saying that I'm going to leave that there. In any event, we've had commissioners who are charged with making sure that laws are being followed, who have done prison time. We have a most recent former mayor who is currently doing prison time.
I forgot.
Yes, Catherine Pugh, our former mayor, is.
Do you know how much time that she has?
Oh, I don't remember, honestly. It was a couple of years, and then the actual sentence was lowered. I really don't want to misquote.
And this was all over children's books, right?
Yeah, children's books.
Or was there more?
Well, there was more to it. There was children's books, and then there were some undisclosed board memberships, and then contracts that kind of came from some of that benefited certain folk, and so in any event, she is no longer here in the city at the moment. The woman that almost won the Democratic primary did not run last cycle because a part of her agreement when she was indicted was that she could not seek to run for public office for 5 years. So those 5 years expired. So when the current mayor, who's now in prison, had to go because she was in prison, the former mayor, who was indicted and removed from office, ran again and almost won the Democrat primary. What is wrong with my people?
I don't know.
We got some issues going on here.
You have a police department that I know that there was a big scandal with this. I wouldn't say that it's gun tracing program, something like that.
Gun trace task force.
Yes, and those police were now. One of the stories I remember was that an officer would speed towards crowds of people, and whoever took off running would be who he would target and then rob later on. Taking people's house, robbing people's, or taking folks' house keys, using city resources to look up where they live, and then going to go rob them, robbing safes and things of that nature. And so when the Freddie Gray case happened and the the riots happened, I had
Oh
said
no,
that
we don't say riots. It was, a disturbance. It was an uprising of something. We don't say that here. No.
right, but I pointed out that this is a police department that has notoriously been corrupt in outrageous manners. I mean, the police were planning toy guns on people after they shot them just in case, to give them a little, leg up in court.
So I will put it to you this way. Every bad scene that you've seen in the movies in the last 20 years has been acted out in the city of Baltimore. How does that sum it up for you? I mean, I'm just saying, as a Republican, you support, we back blue.
Mm-hmm.
But the blue needs to be blue, not purple and green and yellow. And I mean, we back
right.
blue.
Yes, not all of this other stuff.
When I'm in the city and I'm driving down the road and I have to decide when I come to an intersection, do I want to be more concerned about the brothers on the left that are obviously engaged in pharmaceutical distribution,
mm-hmm.
or the officers on the right where I don't know if they actually working with them or against them on the opposite side? So
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Rod Rosenstein, he said that what was happening was that he said this isn't policing. These are crooks, something of that nature.
We're in a place in Baltimore City where we really need an overhaul from top to bottom, front to back, stem to stern. And until that happens, you're not going to weed out all of the things that need to be weeded out. In the past several years, one mayor removed from office, indicted, not able to run again. Former mayor currently in prison. The former comptroller did not run. Well, she lost the primary. She didn't really put forth an effort because she knew her dealings were a little bit too tied to the mayor that's currently in prison. And she was on their list. They were investigating as well. So she removed herself from the spotlight on that one. Former state delegate Nat Oakes, also from Baltimore. There was another delegate that recently got indicted, convicted, and is going to be sentenced soon as well. In the last 10 years, there have been roughly 10 folk that have found themselves on the wrong side of the table, the aisle, and everything else in a courtroom, that have been elected or hired in high levels of leadership in the city of Baltimore. And that's a problem. That's not even about party. That's about common sense. Did your mama teach you better?
And so given this history and legacy of corruption that's there, running for office of any party, how do you convince people that I'm not one of these people? You're not going to see me on an indictment list. How? Just wondering, how does gaining the public trust in that manner, when people just look at the politicians and just feel like all of you are corrupt?
So interestingly enough, one of the networks here in the city during the primary season last year did a story. They did research background on all the candidates, and they found that 51% of the candidates running for mayor in both parties had a criminal record, including more than one charge and or sentence and or time served.
Wow.
More than 51% of the candidates. I'm happy to say I was in the minority side of that.
Well, that helps. That helps your argument.
I'm just saying, if you want better for the city, you want leadership, you want transparency. Saying the word transparency does not make anything transparent. Saying the word transparency just means you understand the word, or at least you want to hear that word. So you're going to keep saying it in hopes that somebody might believe it. But Malcolm X said it best. We've been hoodwinked, led astray, bamboozled. Plymouth Rock has landed on us. So it's to think anything other than that is just foolish. We have to root out the corruption. We have to get folks elected that honestly believe that politics is about public service. And until we do that, we're not going to see anything different in Baltimore.
I agree. And so now, if I were to go over your background regarding public service, well, it's a good one. I like your background. While we're sitting here talking, I'll tell you this. As we had said in the pre-show, I decided to stop looking at cable opinion news and most of cable news in January, literally January 1st. So that's it. I mean, all of the insurrection stuff. I was forced really to see what it was because I said, I mean it when I'm not looking at this. But in part of your background, you've worked with the NAACP. So, that makes you a well-rounded public figure. And, you have had your experience in public service, and not just one that's attempted to get in government to, stay and sit there at whatever level you could.
So I run businesses. My husband and I homeschooled our kids through high school. I didn't know that either. which was an experience with 4 kids, I will tell you.
Oh.
Not one that I would repeat.
I think a lot of the COVID people out there now, or a lot of people over the last 12 months can kind of relate now.
But it's funny because when I told people that
you did it before, they said,
why would you do that? That's what schools are for. And now my brother and his 4, and I said, well, you laughed at me. Now you don't got no choice. Ha ha.
How about it?
At least I did it by choice. You are a hostage.
Yes.
So, those different things have given me a well-rounded perspective on how things are supposed to work at local, state, and federal level.
Yes. And
what it looks like when they don't. And here in Baltimore and a lot of our cities around the country, we're living through that, what it looks like when they don't work the way they're supposed to. And we, the ones watching here, listening, sitting home, watching the news, are the solution. You cannot abdicate your responsibility as a citizen by saying, well, I went and voted, now it's up to them. No, you went and voted, so now you know who it is you need to be tracking to make sure that they are actually acting and voting and legislating in the manner which they said they would during the campaign cycle and earned your vote in the first place. And if not, then you need to be looking for their replacement.
I tell you, I try to, when I feel that I'm either sick of doing, X, Y, Z, tired of it, etc. Because of course it's a lot of work, this. I was listening to you speak about this before, and I believe that you quoted your grandmother, and where she said that if you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Paraphrasing.
Yep.
And so that is why I say that, you can't, of course, there's plenty of things we could all be doing with our time. But I said that, I'll probably be hearing your voice saying this for the next 12 months, probably, when I'm feeling doubtful about things. Because, the keyboard warriors, the complaining on social media all the time. One of our local elections here, I think after the midterms, the neighboring city of Hopewell, the GOP committee there was fairly small at the time. And I remember after the results came in and they weren't, to people's liking, all of these comments of people complaining within the city were there. And I said, well, where have all of y'all been?
Where were y'all the last year?
Yeah, I've been trying
I didn't see y'all when it was time to do voter registration. I didn't see you when it was time to have forums and talk about the issues and what the different legislative perspectives meant to the actual individual. Where were you during that time?
Yeah, I sat and took down names. You all want to complain publicly? My friend's the chair. I'm going to make sure that all these people are heard from later on.
Absolutely. But one of the things that's really kind of key is folks need to stop talking and start doing. There is a gentleman, Scott Pressler, who's been doing cleanups all around the country. And his mom gave me this band last year.
Oh, nice.
And it says, start doing, stop talking.
Oh, I like that.
And I tell folks all the time, please forgive me if you're talking to me and you see that my eyes glaze over. It means I no longer have tolerance for the abundance of words falling out of your face. We need more action. So one of the things that I tried to do here in Baltimore was to tell folks, when you're running for office, use that period during the election cycle as if you won a beauty pageant. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I say, well, no. When you win a beauty pageant, you have a year to promote your platform issue. So for this election cycle, pick what your top 3 are, and that's what you're going to talk about morning, noon, and night. And then you're not only going to talk about it in terms of the person that's currently in the office you're running for, what they're doing wrong, but you're going to talk about it in terms of solutions you have for how they could do it better. And then you're going to actually do things to support the words that are coming out of your mouth so that people understand you really about that life, if you will. So for us, one of the things we talked about during the campaign cycle was food insecurity. And on this shelf behind me are all kinds of different pots. And in them are growing all sorts of different vegetables and herbs and things like that. We've got rhubarb and spinach and basil and peppers and tomatoes and eggplant and all kinds of things growing. Now, the reason is because right now, a lot of the churches are still not open to full capacity. So we are working with the churches in Baltimore to dedicate 6 to 8 parking spaces for vertical gardening, urban vertical gardening. So you would have shelves like these, 3 levels up with containers, everything grown in containers. So that instead of being in a place where you're more susceptible to letting elected folks come in and talk about stuff that you cannot find in that Bible book that you're supposed to be living, eating, sleeping, and breathing in. Because you are in control of your own destiny, because you are not waiting for the truck to come with a delivery of food boxes for you to give out, but you're actually, 1, growing and feeding your congregation, 2, teaching the folks in your congregation and surrounding community how to be able to not be so dependent and beholden, especially in areas where there's food insecurity and food deserts. You know that phrase, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But teach a man a fish, feed him for a lifetime?
Yes.
So here's a new one. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man how to fish, you empower a community.
Okay.
And that's what this should all be about. Empowering our communities, period.
So, and how did you get into farming in Baltimore? And I will add that there was a reality show. Can't think of the name of it. Singer Lil Mo was on this show, and I think it was R&B Divas. That was it. And I will never forget. It was the second season. It was the first episode, and they were walking through some type of, I believe, an urban farm. No, whatever. Walking through a farm, and she was struggling with the word fruit because, which, by the way, you don't have a heavy Baltimore accent. I have to say.
I don't. My mother was an English teacher, and she was very clear on how words need to sound, no matter where you're from. She drove that point home.
I see. No, because I literally teased all of my Baltimore friends. I even pinpointed a conservative I follow on Twitter. I saw him in a video holding an AR-15, and I said, well, and who would have thought that the people from Baltimore would be having that? He said, how'd you know I was from Baltimore? How do you think? But Lomo was struggling with the word fruit because you all have an interesting way of saying your U's. And then she finally stopped and she said, I'm from Baltimore. We don't have fruit. We don't have that here. That's why it just dawned on me. You're in the middle of the city.
I am.
I know that you all do have some open spaces. I forgot how many buildings. I think it was the current governor took down blocks when he first came into office. That's probably, there's plenty of space for farming there. But
the interesting thing is when you're vertical, not horizontal, take a little itty bitty space and get a big old yield from that space.
Okay.
So I would love for you to either join us in person or virtually on the 24th of this month. As a matter of fact, we're going to be doing some workshops, demonstrations. We've invited some of our elected folks and community leaders to come out and really see what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how they can use this to be able to really feed their communities. I apologize. My battery is down to 4%, so I'm hopeful I don't lose you.
Okay, that's fine because we're actually not going to be that much longer. But I've always wanted to know how that works. I'm going to look at my calendar, and hopefully I am free that day to either come in person or, worst case scenario, to do so online. I would love to do that.
We're definitely going to do some Zoom and some Facebook Live type stuff, so you can certainly join us that way. But we want to see you in person. So to find your way on up to Baltimore.
No, absolutely. I talk about you and what you're doing down up there all the time. Just because people, swear there's no Republicans that are in these cities, with what happened during the campaign, the 2020 election, and how people were throwing Baltimore all under the bus.
What? And no pillow. They just picked up the bus and just said, bam, there y'all go.
And I said, I'm not from Baltimore, from DC, but I've spent enough time there. I said that it's a beautiful area. I've known people who've invested there, in recent years. It was number one for home flipping in the country. A couple years ago. And most importantly, my pet peeve for this last election was that I told people there is a Baltimore City GOP. And so whether it's Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, DC, if you're going to be talking about these areas, you should probably speak to those who are actually doing things, such as Pastor Shannon Wright, who was running for mayor. And you probably didn't know that because for whatever reason, you just want to focus on the negative.
Absolutely.
And,
I'd rather stay in the positive myself.
Yes, and hog all the attention. Now, interesting phenomenon that you have in Baltimore, the squeegee boys or squeegee kids.
Yes.
That I saw that you had mentioned in your campaign.
Yes, and I'm gonna. If you could give me one quick second, just so your folks don't think I've just lost my mind. My screen's gonna go black for a second because I'm gonna move to where I can get to my charger, so I don't lose you. So,
no problem.
Continue.
So, just saying, would you mind telling us about this phenomenon of the squeegee boys?
Well, it is an interesting phenomenon, that is for sure. So, in our city, dirt bikes are illegal. However, we have a lot of issues with that. So we have groups of young folks. Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have young folks that, because of the poor leadership in the city, really have nothing constructive to do. So they find themselves out doing things that are not only not constructive, but also illegal. And they create quite an interesting public nuisance a lot of times. And they, for some reason, and I guess maybe it's because, as you can see, we made that transition.
Nice background, by the
way. Thank you. So we've got young folks that, because of the lack of vision in the leadership in the city, have nothing better to do. So when they are on these bikes that the police do not pursue, they have decided that not only is it the thing to do to be in these large groups of them, but that they want to take over the sidewalk where the people are supposed to be. So in the downtown area, on the weekend evenings especially, it is not uncommon to see literally 10, 20, 30.
Oh, Lord.
Coming down right in the middle of downtown. And now, I mean, in the street and on the sidewalk, popping wheelies, all of that, blocking up traffic. It's quite a phenomenon.
Now, I'm no criminal, but if I were to be breaking the law, there are certain rules, and it might be that you might want to stay away from persons of interest, and those are notable people, and that would be the people downtown.
They specifically go there because they know that the police are not allowed to chase. So they will literally ride by in groups of like 20, 30, 40 of them on their bikes, ride by the police, be like, hey, how you doing?
We had an officer who got sick of it. I think he was on a motorcycle. Whatever happened, I think he jumped off the motorcycle, to try to get on the back of the bike. It was something completely insane. I think the officer, sure that he injured himself. And then when wondering, why would you do such a thing? This was in DC. I don't know. I guess you had an overzealous day. And then they had
overzealous, low crime day, bored. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Right.
That kind of thought does not ever enter my mind. So
yes, and I was referring to the window washers, actually. Yeah, that phenomenon that's pretty distinct for Baltimore, at least as far as I know. It's not something that I hear of as common or have observed as common in other major cities, of where you have legislation that has been discussed apparently for decades, which I wasn't really aware of, on what to do with them. I mean, they're their own economic sector and demographic within the city.
The squeegee boys, as they're called in the city, are young folk, usually in their mid-teens to their mid-20s, that are out trying to make a few dollars, cleaning folks' windshields at the intersections. Now, ordinarily, in New York, you see that all the time, or you used to. Ordinarily, that's not such a big issue. It becomes a big issue when either you don't have cash, so you don't pay them, even if you did not ask them to do it, or even more specifically, ask them not to. There have been times when folks have gotten violent and very upset about you not giving them some money, even when they offered and you told them no, and they did it anyway. Now, before the pandemic, it was going in this direction, but since the pandemic, a lot of folks don't carry cash.
Right.
So when you're in a situation where you're at an intersection and that light is red and you're sitting there, you're a captive audience. So when someone comes to wash a windshield, only thing you could do is turn on your windshield wipers to let them know, listen, I said no. Now, sometimes that's no because you just don't want to support that type of effort. Sometimes it's no because you literally don't have cash in your pocket. Regardless of the reason, sometimes there have been incidents where young folk have gotten upset with folks that did not want to pay them and have thrown things through folks' windshields. A couple of folks got grabbed up out of their car and carjacked. They said, you don't want to pay me for cleaning your car, I'm going to take your car.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
So it is an interesting situation, and a violent and dangerous situation. Now, one of the things that comes to mind for me, first and foremost, is most of these folks are in their mid-teens. This happens all day downtown, and it's now kind of even branched out from downtown. So that says to me, why is your little behind not in school?
Yeah, I've not checked on. That was something I wanted to look into about efforts to handle truancy in Baltimore, because
closely related.
Yeah, comparatively in DC, and I've said this for years, they did something extremely bizarre where I remember when they cut the truancy budget, and then when kids weren't going to school, then they were looking at the numbers for attendance in various schools, and then he started closing schools just a couple years later. So then I said, was this planned? You know,
it makes you wonder.
Yeah. So, I know that during the pandemic, the squeegee boys, they were told to not go outside. And one person told a reporter that he said, well, we're told that we can go to work, which is essential. I'm going to work. Me going outside is me working. And he said that he made about $2 a window and pulled in, or at the most, if he's lucky, and raked in about $200 a day, which is actually, I'm pretty sure that's more than some of his better employed counterparts.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that, and the fact that obviously it's a hole in the economy that they are doing this. And I didn't realize, again, that this has been a thing that they've looked at legislating since before I was born. I think they were trying to ban it in '85. So I don't know how bad this was at the time.
So, you know, we've got a lot of issues with the public schools in Baltimore City. And then we've got a lot of issues with youth that are just not going to school in Baltimore City, and they're out putting themselves in danger. I mean, you know, from when you're a young child, you're taught how to cross the street.
Right.
You're taught that where the cars are is not where you're supposed to be. So to put yourself in a situation where you are trying to make some money
and get in front of
the
a
street,
car all day. I know.
you know, obviously, to me, you need the money, one. You're either trying to help your family or you're on your own. Either way, that's not a good situation. So
Yeah.
it seems to me we need some legislation that actually has some teeth. We need some common sense folk to just step out there and say, listen, why are you out here? What do you need? And really give these young folks some options and opportunities to be able to do something better and safer.
Yeah.
They don't need to be in the street. I mean, literally in the street where the cars are.
Yeah, I know. I will say that I know that the city did set up something where they were paying a certain number of kids. I forget how many days a week, I think twice a week, to deliver food to people, like delivering food boxes. But I think that was for $50 a day. And I was just thinking, you know, comparatively, I mean, maybe some of the younger ones, some might take it, but comparatively, there's the guy who said he made $200 a day. You know,
right.
He's not going to, likely not going to go for that.
I mean, we have to look at what is causing these teenagers, 14, 15, 16 years old, to have to feel like they're the breadwinner in their family, that they have to not be in school and put themselves in physical harm by being in the street to make this kind of money. What's going on that they're in that kind of a situation? And we really need to address it.
Yes, and even the schools themselves. If I recall correctly, I need to check. I think that the school buildings, that only about 20% of them, I think, were in good shape within the
your homework
whole.
now, don't you? You are
I
absolutely
do.
correct. We've got a whole bunch of buildings that don't have heat in the winter and don't have cooling in the spring and summer, where the climate is either too hot or too cold for children, for it to be considered safe for the children to be in the buildings. That's a problem.
They were working on this how many years ago? About 5 or more. I remember when it was announced that I think the state was giving some money for it. At one point, they missed the deadline.
Yes.
To ask for the money.
Mismanagement, misappropriation, all sorts of things that have caused Baltimore City to be in a position where the buildings themselves are unsafe. I've had teachers tell me that there are more four-legged critters in their classrooms than students.
Oh, God.
Okay. That's problematic. When you talk about teachers that don't want to teach, let me be very clear. I don't have a problem with children, obviously. I don't have a problem with teaching, obviously. I understand that the children need to be taught. However, if it is my job to teach, somebody need to make sure that there's only two-legged critters in that room.
No, absolutely. And I never hear about that either, of course. That's why these conversations are important, because,
yes,
you know, that'll be a secret. Yeah. If it's up to leadership to tell the story.
There have been problems with water damage, where ceilings have kind of fallen in, mold in the buildings. Again, a whole bunch of different size and shape four-legged creatures, all sorts of things. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't be me. Just we are putting children in buildings that are not being maintained in a manner that encourages curiosity, that encourages a desire to learn. We're putting them in a place where they could catch something. Okay, let's be about that. You could catch something. Critters carry germs. Mold creates respiratory issues.
Yes.
You mixing all that up and expect these children to come sit up in here and learn something.
And I saw that supposedly over the last 5 years that 1 million hours of instruction, I don't know how this was calculated, was missed because of the buildings and the air and the HVAC concerns that they have, or the lack of HVAC in these buildings.
So now, interestingly enough, folks have been talking about school districts all over opening and how to open safely. Baltimore City was one of the last districts to allow children and administrators and teachers back in the buildings. Now, you're not going to hear this in the news, but I'm going to tell you, you do not have to be a rocket scientist to understand the concept. If we were having HVAC and air and mold and all kind of issues pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're in a situation where you need to be upping your game in terms of your physical plant maintenance to have improved circulation, improved HVAC policies. You gotta take a minute and try and find a reason that somebody might believe to slow your roll and get these kids back up into school, because you know that if the air wasn't good before, now with needing to make sure that you have more circulation, more distancing, more of the things that you need for the children to be safe, not just in the building itself, but with COVID,
right?
You got to find something to say that people will give you a minute to slow your roll so you can figure out how to do that safely. I'm being funny, but I'm not being funny. It's kind of serious.
But while you're saying that they need to figure out how to fix the problem, so part of how to determine the issue or to assess it means that you have to actually look at the building, right? So I read that only 2 out of I think you all have 255 schools, something like that. I think I'm close, but only 2 of them in the whole city had been inspected last year, in part because of COVID concerns, which I can possibly see.
I can.
But right. So just listening to you talk about this, okay.
Because
so
now,
there's
if
the
your
concern
concern is
about
COVID,
spreading COVID, but then you have to, at some point, certain things are necessary. Certain things have to be done, like looking at a building that you're going to eventually open. You have to walk in the door. So
during COVID, you've got schools closed. No students are in the building. Very few administrators are in the building. So it seemed to me, seemed to me that might be the time to go and actually inspect things.
And
now, we don't seem to have leadership that is forward thinking or even common sense using in Baltimore. I'm just saying. But to me, when you have a building that's empty, I'm gonna say that again, empty. That might be the time.
Isn't there at least 2 days a week that they're supposed to be at least mostly empty?
That might be the time to go and inspect and see what's going on up in there. And see where you're really at, so you can put together a proper plan to figure out how to get where you need to be. Because we all know the schools are not where they need to be. But let's be real. Go in the building, look around, see where they're really at, and come up with a plan to get them closer to where they're supposed to be. Let's stop saying we are providing this, we are doing that, and hoping that people will just believe it because those are the words that are coming out of your mouth. Let's put some reality behind some of these words. Sending your child to school should not be a reality TV season episode.
No.
It should not be based on set design, on smoke and mirrors, or anything else. And that's what we have a lot of in Baltimore. Whenever somebody says transparency, when they're a leader elected in Baltimore City, you better look behind them, see who's pulling the string, number 1. And number 2, see who's blowing what kind of smoke and trying to get you to believe it.
You're right.
Saying it, repeating it does not make it so.
Which is why
and if the folks here in the city and cities around the country want to sit there on the sidelines and continue to complain because of what they see that their elected leaders are doing, and complain about how bad this is or bad that is or bad the other is, but don't take the opportunity to do something, you're going to continue to get what you always got, which is nothing good.
No, that's right. And so this is why I understand that you support, or why you support school choice so much, particularly
Absolutely.
Charter schools. I had heard you, I think this was during a press conference that you had with the other candidates on your slate that were running, where you had said that, we need to allow more school choice until the city decides to get its act together. Those words ring a lot more true. In looking at the state, yes, in looking at the state of the schools and just, how long this is taking. I mean, as I said, I think when I heard about the state trying to fix their schools, that had to have been 2012, 2016, I'm sure, and all these years later for me to look and to see
Still in the
how
same
there's
place.
so many of those schools that are in, in that type of condition. And just as you said, common sense is to walk inside of the building. Our school system here in Petersburg, the superintendent said that they need $20 million of capital improvements, a number that goes through every year, and that they never have to amend the request because, well, it never happens. But she also, for someone who questioned the amount, she said, well, I also invite you to come and visit some of the schools so that you could see for yourself. And I said, is she insinuating that they've not been there? Which that's on my to-do list. I'm going to write that down to ask about during my next city council meeting. Sounds like you all have never been inside of the building. So
yeah. I mean, like I said, good leadership is common sense. You can go to school for political science, you can go to school for law, you can go to school for public policy, you can all that. But if you don't have the common sense that God gave a gnat, it is going to be ineffective. So instead of those of us sitting on the sidelines criticizing and critiquing, go find some way to be useful and actually turn some things around in your city. When we talk about education, we talk about school choice. That's charter schools. Yes, we need more good charter schools in the city. That's vouchers. Yes, parents need more access to vouchers. More vouchers need to be made available. And number 3, we need to introduce academic savings accounts. And academic savings accounts, see, if I'm, let's be real. If I'm a parent in the city and I'm a single parent head of household, or maybe 2 parent, but we're struggling, if I get a voucher and I can send my child to a good private school, I'm still only halfway there. Because the reality is, in order for my child to be able to get the same kind of education that the child sitting next to them is, there are some things that they need in addition to just being able to walk in that school. We need to be able to make sure they've got the electronics to be able to keep up with the classwork. We need to make sure that they have access to the things that they need to be able to have success in their academic career. So academic savings accounts are percentages that go to the school to pay for tuition, and percentages that go to pay for the peripherals necessary to have a successful academic experience at that private school.
Okay.
So if we are actually in a position where we're ready to make some significant advances and inroads in public education, then we need to have the tools to do so. When you decide you're going to paint your apartment, right? You don't just look at the can of paint and say, well, how you going to get on the wall?
Right.
You ready to paint, you're going to get a drop cloth in case something spills. You're going to have the paint. You're going to have some brushes. You're going to have those little rectangular bin things. You're going to have all your supplies. Right. So that you can do the job that you're saying you intend to do.
Yes.
Anything in life, it's the same thing. You tell us you want to make sure to improve education and we want to get the best possible education. But you got students that's showing up for less than 50% of the classes that are still passing because everybody's asleep at the wheel.
Oh, Lord.
So that doesn't tell me you're serious about education. And I'm going to get in trouble and I don't really care. But if you are the mayor of this city and one of your biggest claim to fame is that you are a son of this city and you are a product of the public schools, pump your brakes right there. You leading this city in a place where we got 6 straight years of 300 plus homicides. You talking about you are a product of the public education in this city that we know has been broken since before you were born. That does not give me the warm fuzzies in your leadership ability to be able to see the way out of the problem. That tells me you understand the problem, but it doesn't tell me you got a clue about a solution. Let's be real about this. Being there, knowing the problem does not provide a solution, because if it did, we wouldn't still be talking about public schools 20, 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
Folk need to wake up, stop sniffing whatever they sniffing, put the cup down and get real for a minute. We are losing generations of students. You want to understand why the criminals are getting younger and younger in Baltimore City? Because the opportunities to be able to be a child, to go to school, to get an education, to be able to dream and hope for a brighter future is gone that fast. So we're seeing them out here jacking folk. Kids don't come out knowing how to carjack.
Right.
They're learning that.
And to me, the whole window washing thing, I mean, that's a very blatant thing. I mean, usually, truancy issues, even if kids are, doing things to make money, it's not usually in the middle of the street in plain view. That's how you know that something is broken in the city as far as the economics goes.
Folks are bold here in this city about doing their thing the way they want to do it, regardless to if it makes sense or it's legal. Again, you have a prosecutor that's decided this thing, she's just not going to prosecute. You got children that should be in school, we're just not going to worry about it. We're going to pass them anyway. That's not how you turn the city around. That's not how you provide viable solutions to the problems in our cities. And then when you start to wonder, why are these criminals getting younger? Why is crime going up? Does it again, it don't take a rocket science to figure it out. You got companies closing, jobs leaving, parents not able to make ends meet, even come anywhere near close, much less meeting. Right. Schools that aren't functioning correctly, children that when they do go in the building aren't learning a doggone thing. And you wonder why we're seeing the evidence of poor leadership and poor structure in the city. That's why President Trump was able to talk about Baltimore so much. And Congressman Elijah Cummings tried to defend his record and his work in Baltimore. And I appreciate that you tried to do that. But what's that phrase? Tell the truth, shame the devil?
Yeah.
We got some issues going on up in here. And it's time for some leadership that will speak truth to power, roll up their sleeves, and get the job done. And we don't have that.
And so, one of the squeegee boys, I think the person that I mentioned who said that he was making $200 a day, I happened to see that he said that he and his brother lived in public housing together, and their rent was about $850, and their utilities were about $300. And so the first thing that struck me is, A, I didn't realize there were people who lived in public housing who paid that amount of money, and B, I mean that's even up there. I feel like that should be approaching market rates somewhere within the city. It has to be something of a regular unit would be that amount, but the state of the public housing, just nationwide, the way that they're deteriorating. And so, and that's something that I believe the maintenance is the locality's responsibility.
Absolutely.
And to realize that they're, paying that amount and then having to deal with, and that's a problem of the city. That's a shame. And I say this because I talk about affordable housing and whatnot with people all the time. And one of the critiques is people say that folks need to pay something. They really think that people live in public housing and don't pay anything at all. But, I just felt like mentioning that amount to show what people have to deal with in the city, to have substandard living and to pay that amount. And I can only imagine how many people that are like that in the city. Those are the ones who really should be upset about what's going on.
But it's been going on so long that it's become the norm. And that's generations of failed leadership.
No, it absolutely is. And as far as your solutions go, one of the great things about urban farming is the fact that it puts people, not only are you helping with the food desert issue, but it's also helping with putting people into a job market. I mean, farming in general, just something that we don't really think very much about in cities like Baltimore, and particularly for the natives, less than I think about 1% of farms are Black owned. So, that's teaching a very good skill set.
See, now, all these things that you're saying are why you need to make sure to be in Baltimore on April 24th. Because we have really done a lot to make this something that people can really grasp and really understand how to do and make work. We took what was our headquarters, which is now the office, and have turned it into an indoor greenhouse.
Oh, nice.
So we have literally right now, ready for churches that are signing up to the program, ready to deliver, almost 1,000 plants ready to go.
Oh, wow.
And most of them, my husband and I planted ourselves from seed.
That is a lot.
It is. We started right after the election. we do a weekly podcast where we show some of the ways to be able to garden and be able to really increase the yield in a small space, even if all you have is a window, things that you can grow indoor.
Okay.
So I will make sure that you have the link to our
Okay.
YouTube channel so that you can share some of that with your folks. We are really trying to come up with solutions, viable solutions, sustainable and viable solutions to tackle a big problem in the city, and not just our city, but cities around the country, and that's food insecurity. 1 in 4 folks in the city of Baltimore are technically, literally food insecure. 1 in 4.
That is a shame. And I'll say this: there's apparently there's a charter school that has that's sort of going along in this sort of mindset that you have in Baltimore County, that just recently purchased 3 or 4 chickens that the school is raising. The parents put together, I think, $3,000 to do that. And so I saw that and it reminded me of what you were doing. And again, both of those tie together. I don't know if you're interested in farm animals, expanding.
I told my family we need a chicken coop and we need a fish farm, small, so we can literally do it all.
And so, I just thought I would, point that out to add some legitimacy to that idea if you decide to do it. And, they think that it's crazy. And if you compare like Baltimore to DC, just a couple years ago, the mayor of DC tried to ban chickens being in, for people to have in their backyards. I hope that, it failed. I hope that Baltimore doesn't get to that point. If this is what people are doing, to help financially or, to create another economy, I see no reason to stop it. And my first reaction when I saw that, I was talking about it the other day, I said, DC used to be a southern town. The chickens around this was normal. Stop trying to erase history. It was supposed to fail.
My grandparents, when they were younger, they were sharecroppers. My grandparents, they grew up they were like, that's what they did. So you went to school maybe through 8th grade, but then you got out there and you did what you needed to do to help the family. And then we've run so far to be Hasidic city folk, so far from where we come from, that we forget we know how to do things to be able to make life bearable, and not just bearable, but good. So trying to get back to a little bit of that.
That was and that was why I said that I wanted to know how this works. I've always found it interesting. And I said, I think this is going to be the last instance that I'll watch someone create an urban farm where I'm just standing on the sidelines. And I think that I'm going to try and step in.
Good. So we'll definitely see you April 24th then, because then you get all the instruction you need.
Yes. So I'm not going to hold you much longer. So being a Republican in 2021, we have survived 2 impeachments. And insurrection, yes, of the same president. An insurrection, and as I said earlier, after the election, I was busy. I had managed the campaign. I was doing a whole lot. I tuned out the news. This was before I vowed to not watch any at all. So from November to January, I'm not really looking. And then, a couple months go by, and I'm like, I don't understand how we got here. How did any of this happen? Before January 6th, we had a couple crazy events going on. Folks,
we did.
Party officials running around saying, "Don't vote." And I'm saying, how is this helping any of us? Why is this going on? But in light of all of this, how is it surviving as a Republican or living as one these days?
It's an interesting challenge. But it's a positive, interesting challenge. A lot of folks, as you even made mention of, didn't realize that there were Republicans in the city. And to see that I am a Republican, I am a Black woman, I do not have 4 legs or a tail or 2 heads or anything like that. And for those that have ever really questioned it, trust and believe my Black card is firmly ensconced in my wallet, and it ain't going nowhere. Not the way my mother would say, and it is not going anywhere. No, it ain't going nowhere. Okay. So I find that here's something for you. The best way to be a Republican in an urban area is to remember who you are and whose you are, how you were raised. Speak truth to power in a way that can do nothing else but earn community credibility. That's what you do. That's how you survive.
You know, I used to say that line a lot about knowing who you are and whose you are, which of course I'm sure is pretty common in church. But I was an assistant choir director in John Cherry's church, from the heart. So yes, that is actually a statement that I got from him that I've always remembered. And he would say that in you know, God rest his soul, I think he's been gone for about a year now. But when we are feeling in doubt of what we're supposed to be doing, he always would say to remember our purpose. And
Absolutely.
so I don't remember if this was on air or not, but I think this makes the second time that you've just read my mind about something that I had going on here.
Discernment.
So, yes. That's very good. You've got a good batting average today. So what do you think, as for the party, what do you think should be focused on for the next 4 years?
People. What's it going to take to make people's lives better? When you focus on the people, the policy and the legislation should follow in that same vein. People. That's what the focus needs to be. People.
I think I have to agree. I think that when I'm discussing issues and elections, and there's various ways to do primaries and things like that, and ways to steer it in a certain direction. And it's times like that where I say to myself, when we're trying to determine what to do, well, what's best for the public? It seems like, and even in government, I said that during my time in working municipal government, that we're focused on our work and executing city services, and if something happens, trash pickup is delayed or something, well, we're trying to get it done. If the public's told, fine. If they're not, meanwhile trash is sitting out for a whole day, we forget the people. And it seems simple, but I did want to reiterate that to everyone out there, what you said, that we need to focus on people. And it really is actually that simple.
It is. A lot of the muddy waters will get real clear when you just focus where you're supposed to focus, on the people.
Where you're supposed to, like for our the candidates, because we're in the middle of a gubernatorial race and other statewide races. My role was, I said that I think that what's best for the public is that people are exposed to as many as possible, and so everyone got invitations, and I made sure that everyone in the state, at least if they didn't make it, they at least were invited. And if you want to throw some type of event, I'm all for making sure that the public knows that we're here, we exist, and I will rally and corral whoever I have to for the sake of us doing, just as you said earlier, getting out and doing something.
Absolutely. Now, whether you get the result that you're looking for on election day or not, if you've actually been a part of moving the needle and trying to be a part of a solution, then you're already ahead of the game, regardless to what the results, the number results are on election day. That's what it's going to take in a lot of our areas.
Absolutely. See, I knew I was going to love talking to you today. So before we go, if you don't mind, could you let everyone know how to find you on social media and online?
Sure. You can find me, Pastor Shannon Wright, on Facebook, or Urban Engagement Initiative. That is the entity that we formed towards the end of the election cycle, recognizing that regardless to what the outcome was on election day, there was a lot of work that needed to be done in the city, and we intended to stick around and do it. So Urban Engagement Initiative. You can find us on Facebook, and we're all pretty doggone responsive. So send a message, reach out.
Yes, I will say that I followed you for years. We've had plenty of great conversations online. Yes, you are very responsive. I really appreciate all of the feedback and keeping us informed with what's going on in the city over the years.
I appreciate you. because your coverage, your posts, your things that you share are not all about politics. And it takes someone that understands politics, but can talk about more than politics to really drive that point home. You post things that not only keep us up to date on what's going on and from a political perspective, but just that while you're sitting there hemming and hawing about politics, life is still happening. So
life is still happening.
I thank you for providing and reinforcing that perspective.
Thank you. Listen, years ago, it was 2011, exactly a year and 1 month ago, where my former business partner, I didn't know we worked together at the time. I had started a new job, and she approached me one day. We had a conversation about, our backgrounds and whatnot in the first 2 weeks of my time in the office. And she just one day walked up to me and said, "Why don't you write about something that matters?" And I will never forget that. Our local newspaper did a feature on me a week ago, and that was literally the line that it started with. And that has been my mantra since. As much as and even with the pop culture things, I try to make sure that that there is purpose as far as a narrative, that I'm not creating a negative one, that I'm not painting our community in a worse of a light. I think 2 years ago we had a moment of there was the nation's largest hip hop festival. It's called Rolling Loud Festival, and it's in Miami area. There were all of these shootings and everything. It's like the whole hip hop community gets to see each other. So everyone was just, checking people off on their list of who they were going to get at the moment, unfortunately. And I'm writing about things, and I was covering all of it individually. And then I looked at who was responding, and I'm seeing people responding with some stereotypes, saying, "Oh, see, look at him." And I said, "Nope, this ends today. I'm not going to give you all the satisfaction of getting this information from me."
Yep.
And ever since then, I thought that I was doing a pretty good job at the moment, but I said that I still do also have the responsibility of making sure that we're represented well, even when this is outside of politics.
Absolutely. And you do a really good job of that. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Pastor. So before we go, I want you to hang around for just a second. For everyone else, you can follow me on social media, the Media Mogul Network, JaVonni Brustow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. This will be written about on my Medium account later. And you can check out recent interviews that I did. I think the last one was with a former Republican who ran for office in D.C., Isaac Smith. The first that I've seen in years, after me pushing for a full decade for people to run for office, and the president of Black Lives Matter 757. See, I can do both sides. JaVonni Jones. Got it. All right. And until next time, I will see you all soon.